I confess that what I am going to tell you is absolutely real and that it is happening. At this very moment in my life, I present to you my secret of infidelity, loaded with forbidden details and unexpected twists. So here I am, an ordinary woman with a life, apparently normal. But let me say that appearances are deceiving, and in my case, it is so. It turns out that I had a fantasy with the gardener of our house. Yes, that muscular tanned guy, and with a charming smile. It all began a few months ago when he came to work in our garden. From the first moment I saw him, something lit inside me. His skillful hands pruning the branches, his sweaty body under the sun, and that intense look that seemed to tell me things that my husband would never dare to whisper. It was like an instant crush. From then on, my mind was filled with thoughts, wild and forbidden desires. I became obsessed with each chance encounter in the garden, each accidental encounter as he passed by. However, I resisted for a long time. I tried to ignore the attraction, thinking about the consequences and my commitment to marriage. But there came a point where I couldn't take it anymore. One hot summer afternoon, when my husband was away for work, I decided to give free rein to my fantasy. I dressed in my most seductive outfit, I put on perfume, and went out to the garden. My heart, I was loving, like never before. Mixing excitement and guilt, I was about to cross the line, and there was no turning back. So there I was, in my most seductive dress that I had carefully chosen to seduce the gardener. Each item of clothing was strategically chosen to highlight my curves and arouse his interest. I put on a tight dress that highlighted my attributes, some high heels that I stretched my legs and left my hair loose and slightly wavy, giving me a mysterious and sensual air. As I walked to the patio, I could feel my heart beating hard in my chest. I tried hard to control the anxiety and the nerves that ran through my body. I knew I was playing with fire, but the desire to explore this fantasy was stronger than any fear or guilt I could feel. When I got to the patio, I saw him there working diligently on the grass. His body shined with the sweat of effort, and every muscular movement was like an invitation to come closer. I approached him with a sure step, trying to hide the nervousness I felt inside me. "Hello," I said with a flirtatious smile. "I see that you are working hard under the sun." The gardener stopped and looked at me, surprised by my presence. His eyes met mine, and I could see the flash of curiosity in them. "Yes, the garden always requires a lot of work," he answered with a deep and attractive voice. I moved a little closer, letting my perfume intoxicate his space. I noticed how his eyes strayed towards my neckline and how his breathing became more agitated. "Do you need a hand?" I asked, lowering the tone of my voice slightly, creating an intimate atmosphere between us. The gardener seemed to hesitate for a moment, but finally nodded with his head. I was glad to have hit the nail on the head and to have awakened his interest together. We began to work in the garden, but instead of entering into the plants, the tension floated in the air with each movement. Our hands brushed against each other. Our bodies got closer dangerously, and the electricity between us was palpable. There was no need to say a word. Our eyes and our gestures spoke for themselves. When he arrived the moment of watering the plants, the gardener offered me a hose. I took the opportunity, and subtly I got closer to him. I brushed his arm with mine and let my look challenge him. I knew I was playing with fire, but I also knew that it was now or never. So without warning, I let go of the hose and got closer until our lips were centimeters apart. Desire took hold of us, and we kissed with unbridled passion. It was a kiss that lit a fire that neither of us could control. We gave ourselves to that burning and unbridled kiss, letting our lips intertwine in a sensual dance. I felt his strong and warm hand rest on my waist, while my fingers got lost in his dark hair. The world seemed to disappear around us, leaving only space for desire and excitement that it consumed us. We separated briefly with the need to take a breath, but our gazes burned with the same fire that united us. We did not need words to understand what was happening between us. It was a powerful, animal, physical connection that took us to forbidden places. In a burst of passion, I ventured to slide my hands down his muscular torso, feeling the firmness of his body under my fingers. Our lips met again, And this time, we were in a state of unity. These hands explored every inch of exposed skin. Every caress, each kiss, plunged us deeper into an abyss of desire and ecstasy. We let ourselves be carried away by the impulse, looking for any surface to lean on while our bodies melted in a whirlwind of pleasure. The radiant summer sun caressed us, but it was the courage of our passion that enveloped us. The tension became completely unbearable, and without saying a word, the gardener took me by the hand and led me to a corner of the garden. There, surrounded by vegetation, and with the security of privacy, we gave ourselves over to the unbridled desire that consumed us. Each rose, each whisper was like an electric discharge that ran through our bodies. Lust and excitement took over every fiber of my being while I let myself be carried away by the moans and whispers that escaped from our lips. It was a liberating and exciting experience, but also plagued by fear of being discovered after a time that seemed eternal. We separated exhausted and with labored breathing. We knew that what we had done was a sin, a betrayal of my husband. But at that moment we felt alive, as if we had discovered a part of ourselves that was hidden until that moment. And so, in the middle of that mixture of ecstasy and fear, we found ourselves trapped in a world of emotions and forbidden desires. We knew that we should put an end to this dangerous adventure, but our passions seemed to have a force that surpassed any logic or reason. From that day on, our secret encounters in the garden became an addictive part of our lives. Every time my husband left the house, I looked for any excuse to cross paths with the gardener. I could pretend that I needed something from him garden, or just invent a casual conversation that would take me to his side. Each encounter was a dangerous dance full of furtive glances and subtle touches. The emotions intensified, and our bodies fused in an unbridled desire. The garden became our secret refuge where we gave ourselves to unrestrained passion. The adrenaline of the forbidden increased the intensity of our encounters. We ventured into more daring places in the garden, hidden among the shadows of the bushes, or at the edge of the pool. Each corner became witness to our sighs and moans, intertwined like a clandestine melody that only we knew. However, as our relationship continued, something began to change between us. The gardener, with his deep gaze and his affectionate gestures, began to show himself more affectionate outside of our encounters. His clandestine text messages became more frequent and full of sweet words. Little by little, the desire that united us began to mix with deeper feelings. One day, after one of our passionate encounters, in the garden, he took my hands and looked me straight in the eyes. I could see in his look that there was something more than desire, something that went beyond the moments of stolen passion. "I want something more than this," he said in a soft but determined voice. "I want a relationship with you." His confession took my breath away. I was surprised, caught between love, and I knew that my marriage was in crisis, that the spark that once united us had vanished. But still, the idea of abandoning everything for an adventure with the gardener was terrifying. "I'm sorry," I said in a firm voice, and trying not to take it the wrong way. "I am married. I have a committed life with my husband." His gaze reflected resignation, as if he knew it wasn't possible. He knew he was playing with fire from the start, but I had hoped that our feelings for each other could take us beyond a simple passing adventure. "I understand," he whispered, "but I can't go on like this. I can't settle for crumbs of your time." His words surprised me. I was faced with the dilemma of choosing between the stability of my marriage and the unbridled passion I shared with the gardener. My heart was torn between security and exciting uncertainty as the days went by. The tension between us became unbearable. The encounters in the they became increasingly scarce, full of awkward silences and looks full of nostalgia. We both knew that our forbidden romance was coming to an end, fading slowly like the wilted flowers in the garden. I realized that I had to take steps to get rid of this problem before my husband found out about our affair. I couldn't just fire the gardener, as that would raise suspicions and could ruin everything. I needed to find a solution that would be discreet and effective. I decided it was time to put an end to our encounters in the garden once and for all. I couldn't allow our emotions to become even more entwined by putting my marriage at risk. Anyo and my emotional stability. It was time to face the consequences of my actions and move on with my life. I gathered my courage and organized a conversation with the gardener. in a neutral place, far from the garden that had witnessed our unbridled passion. I explained to him that our relationship had to end, that we could not go on with this. I tried to explain the reasons behind my decision, appealing to responsibility and respect for my husband and my marriage commitment. The gardener listened attentively while I explained my reasons for ending our relationship. His gaze reflected a mixture of sadness and understanding as he spoke. I could see how he was accepting my decision and assimilating the consequences that could occur if we continued. "I understand your position," he finally said in a calm voice. "Although it hurts me, I understand that you must prioritize your marriage and your commitment. I don't want to jeopardize what you have built with your husband." His words relieved me. To a certain extent, I had feared that the gardener would react negatively, that he would resist stopping seeing us in secret. However, his understanding and acceptance made me feel a little relief that we could overcome this situation in a mature and responsible way. "I promise you that I won't say anything. Continue the money. I will keep our secret under lock and key. I understand that this is the right thing to do. Even if it hurts, I will remember what we shared, but I will not interfere in your life or your marriage." His words rang in the air, and we both remained silent for a moment, letting the reality of the situation settle between us. Although everything was over, and we knew it was the right decision, we said goodbye with a sweet but passionate hug. There were no tears or reproaches, just a farewell, a silent one, that marked the end of a stage in our lives. Each one of us would go our separate ways, leaving behind the secrets and the forbidden desires. From that moment on, we both focused on continuing our lives. The gardener continued working in the garden, but our encounters became strictly professional. We crossed paths occasionally, but we avoided any personal conversation that could fan the flames of the past. The days passed, and the distance between the gardener and I became evident in the garden. Our interactions were merely functional. I avoided any prolonged contact, focusing on supervising the work and keeping conversations limited to the work environment. The gardener also understood the importance of maintaining distance and respect, although sometimes I could notice that his eyes and glances were escaping. He tried hard to be professional and avoid any insinuation or gestures that could trigger problems caused by our adventures. We both tried to maintain an invisible but necessary barrier little by little. The intensity of our clandestine encounters faded into oblivion. The looks loaded with desire became blurry memories, replaced by a distant but cordial work relationship. As the months passed, the passion I once felt for the gardener disappeared completely. I realized that it had been a fleeting and forbidden attraction fueled by the dissatisfaction in my marriage. Although I could fall into temptation at times, I remained firm in my commitment to continue and strengthen the relationship with my husband. With time, there came a time when even the fleeting glances and the casual encounters in the garden became rare. Our lives had taken different paths, and although we shared a secret that was all that united us, the forbidden love story we had lived was buried in the past. As time passed, I realized that my relationship with the gardener was over completely. The longing and temptation that once existed gradually faded away, replaced by an inner peace and a renewed dedication to my marriage. As I set out to strengthen the relationship with my husband, our bond became deeper and more meaningful. My husband, oblivious to my past encounters with the gardener, noticed the positive change in our relationship. We began to spend more time together, sharing common interests and rekindling the spark that had lost as we reconnected. Emotionally, our bond became stronger and solid than ever. As for the gardener, he continued to work in the garden, but our interactions were reduced to a minimum. It is evident that both we moved on and decided to close that chapter of our lives. Both of our lives took different paths, and although the secret was kept, we never crossed that forbidden line again. Time passed without my husband suspecting anything about our adventure. We managed to keep the secret well kept, and the gardener showed his commitment to keep it. Having our story forgotten, there were never signs of infidelity in my behavior, or signs that could raise my husband's suspicions. Thank you for listening to this exciting story. If you want to continue enjoying and exploring other exciting stories, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Click on the subscription button to receive updates of our next stories. We await you in our next video.